It's live on Facebook. So, good evening, ladies. How y'all doing? How y'all doing? We are Phenomenal Woman and Ladies of Lavender came together with Miss Kerryanne Burke. Right. You are running for city council out there in Queens. So I would like to thank you for coming on with us and sharing what's your thoughts on domestic violence. As everybody know, We Are Phenomenal Women is an organization that want to prevent people from going into a domestic violence relationship by giving them the education piece. And sometimes we don't even know we are in a DV situation because we just didn't know. However, coming to our organizations, you can now understand what is DV, the different types of domestic violence and so on. And everybody know that this is something very much passionate to me. So once again, my name is Shanice Gatewood Ali. I'm the CEO of We Are Phenomenal Woman, and I appreciate you ladies coming on. If anyone have any questions to ask, please feel free to come on or go on my email and let me know that you would like to join the conversation. Those who come on, please remember to mute yourself and let's be respectful to our guests. My email address is sgatewood, SGATEWOODWAPW @gmail.com. So I'm going to give the floor to Miss Kerryanne Burke. I want you to basically introduce yourself. Who are you?
Hi, everyone. If at any point I freeze, please let me know via the chat or wave at me so that I can switch Wi-Fi signals. My name is Kerryanne Burke. I am a Southeast Queens resident. I was born and raised over in St. Albans and Queens Village. I am a child of immigrants. My mom is from England and my dad is from Jamaica, West Indies. However, like many immigrants, we struggled at the beginning part of our life here in America, and we experienced homelessness. And so for me, the candidacy that I'm running for Southeast Queens, which is District 27, it encompasses Queens Village, Springfield Gardens, St. Albans, Cambria Heights, parts of Jamaica, and Hollis. It's really about giving voice to the voiceless. It's not really the politics as usual. It's utilizing my skills that I've attained over the course of my career to actually give back to the community. I'm an attorney. I was inducted into the Bar Association back in 2014, and I started my legal career really in Albany. I was working for the New York State Assembly and the Senate. And prior to that, I did a lot of clinical work, as I mentioned to you ladies, at NILAG. And that's where I garnered a lot of my education on domestic violence. I myself have never been in a domestic violence relationship, but I do understand the issues that a lot of women face, because it's something that we all can fall prey to over the course of our life if we're not careful. And what I've learned about domestic violence is largely related to power and control. And sometimes we don't know that the things that people who are intimate are doing to us is not really routed in love, but it's routed in just trying to control you, and then it crescendos up to the ultimate fatality of death. So for me, I always stand along with women and men, because we do know men do also have cases of domestic violence, maybe at a lesser rate. But I stand with people who are victimized, and I love to educate. I love to represent them and just try to make sure that we heal and we could move forward as a community. Because I think about it holistically. If you have a family that's having a dysfunctional moment, then that child may come to school and may not be able to focus on their education. And that ultimately affects us as a larger African American community, or just a New York City community, if you will. A little backstory: I am a devout Sunday school teacher. I love to teach. I'm a member of the Greater Allen AME Cathedral, and I serve in that ministry as well as others. I serve my community in different civic associations and nonprofits. I love to incorporate nonprofits as well. I do that independently to make sure that we have good businesses and small business representation that are Black owned in the community. And my family is a working class family, and we have worked our way up out of what is considered poverty. And now, we reside in Queens Village, and I want to represent it as well as the larger District 27 to make sure that everything goes according to what I see is progress in our communities of color. And I'm excited to hear all the questions.
Yes. So, okay, so your district is 27, you said?
Yeah, District 27. So any ladies live in Queens Village, Cambria Heights, St. Albans, Hollis, Springfield Gardens, and parts of Jamaica, that would be what I would be representing.
Okay, that's good to know. I'm happy you was able to break that down because I'm in Harlem, but domestic violence is everywhere. It's everywhere. It's in different countries. It's everywhere. So, I mean, if we have everyone on the same page trying to work together on this silent killer, and the reason why I call it a silent killer is because you, like I just said, you might be alive on the outside, but your insides is jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
When I say jacked up, I mean anxiety, PTSD, and low self-esteem, and you're not a healthy person. So I want to say, I believe that domestic violence is a public health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that they're not highlighting it as a public health issue? Could you bring that?
I think it's a lot with the history of relationships in general. So if we go back in time, whether it's America or Africa or Europe, or the Caribbean, for instance, there's this idea that what happens in your household is your business. And I'm pretty sure as Black people, we kind of know that you don't talk your business outside. You've been told by your parents growing up, what goes on here stays in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you've also heard these words of, that's their problem, that's their relationship. You don't get involved in grown folks' relationship because
Mm-hmm.
of XYZ. So we've all been trained to kind of not be our brother's keepers when it comes to relationships. And I think that's across racial lines. So when you have that dynamic, it just breeds for domestic violence to increase, in my opinion. And therefore, you're going to look at it as a kind of isolated scenario over there, and it's not like a public health crisis like COVID-19. That's the mentality. But we need to shift, because when people are in abusive relationships, they go out into society. They don't just stay in the house. So they're going to go out and they're going to interact in the world in a manner that may not be at their 100%, and that's going to affect the entire society. It affects children. It affects the school system. It affects even transportation. It affects your economy. It affects the police force. It affects a lot of things. I can, for instance, give an example here in Springfield Gardens. 2 officers were recently shot when they responded to a domestic violence incident. So one person's relationship had an effect on another family, 2 other families. And while that suspect, the abuser, he was killed, it still affected those officers as well as the woman and the children. And it's just a lot of people. It affected me, and I was witnessing it from the news. So I agree with you. We do need to shift our mentality in how we look at domestic violence for certain.
Right. So, what do you think we need to do? Because my thing right now is it's time for us to start shining the light on the situation. And I don't mean by just marching and walking and talking amongst each other. I'm talking about We Are Phenomenal Women, and so many other people, so many other organizations coming into the forefront of City Hall if we have to, and get them to see that we are here and we are suffering. You know, I know other race of women, they do stuff like that, and they actually be heard. You know, a lot of us are still ashamed and scared and feel that it's judgment. You know, somebody's, oh, I saw Shanice over there. I don't give a cop pick a damn who knows now, you know, because at the end of the day, it's me who's going through the suffering.
Mhm.
It's not that individual, because that individual is living his life, doing whatever he does. So I'm to the point that I'm like, I have seen and heard too many of us suffering and being re traumatized over and over again in the system or because of the system. So, speaking of systems, right now, a few of myself and a few other ladies and all my great supporters, I am working on getting a 25-bed shelter. And with the 25-bed shelter, I want our shelter be ran a different way. I worked in several shelters and I have seen how it's pain on top of pain. It's hurt on top of hurt. It's disrespect on top of disrespect. What is your thoughts on you and your team going into the shelter system and speaking to the woman about how they're being treated in the shelter? What's your thoughts on that?
So I do have some history with shelter site visits. I did it for family shelters. When I was at the Department of Education, I was a student of the public service scholar program at Hunter College, and they ended up hiring me as an education consultant later on in the Students in Temporary Housing Unit. That required me to go into shelters throughout New York City to ensure that the federal McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act rights of the students were protected. And you go in, you look around to see if they have the posters, you talk to the family assistants, you really do an investigation as to what's happening on the day to day. Sometimes you may stay for quite a bit of hours to just ensure things are functioning.
Right,
For the DV shelters, I was never like invited in because of the fact there's that confidentiality,
right,
privacy aspect, because you can't have that location disclosed. So I agree. There is definitely room for improvement, and we have to figure out a way where you improve and you get the anecdotal evidence from the women in the shelter to tell you the truth so that you can make those changes. I think we need more supportive services, to be honest, to give people that ability to be vulnerable and they feel better about telling you how they really feel.
right,
Because oftentimes, as you said, there is a shame factor. They may not want to talk to someone coming in from an agency like myself or another person, but they may talk to someone that they trust and feel close with that identifies with their pain and their issues. So we need to build out teams with that in mind. We can't just build with the idea that I'm just going to come in from, the city government with my way of doing things and force them to talk to me.
right,
Maybe we need validators in the community. Maybe we want to sit down with some people who are a little bit further along in their healing process,
right,
because the worst thing is to force people to talk. That's just not going to be good.
right.
But I agree, there's room for improvement. And I think that as city council members or people who are running for office, we should have these conversations with them, and we should see where they are positioned and how they would actually help to organize to make it happen. I may not be able to go in, or I may be able to go in. I'm not sure of any of the rules, but I can become a voice to
Right.
help that organizing. And that's where a person like me getting into office and other women throughout the city and men coming into these positions of power, that we can actually shift that conversation and help to make changes.
Absolutely. I believe you anything is possible. One thing, if I was able to get into Rikers Island and speak to the woman there, you can get in there. You know, especially once you get the title, you know, and I believe it can happen.
Definitely.
I definitely believe it can happen. And with that, we can get that to happen. How about that?
Yes.
Now, I had, before COVID, I had the opportunity to get a space on Saturdays at at a at a at a place, I can't say where, but it was a safe haven, and the woman will come and speak. And I just shared a video on our personal site today, if I'm not mistaken. And it made me cry because I'm like, I'm not able to do the support groups right now because of the whole COVID situation. And one of our young ladies, she used to come there and she used to just sit there and don't say nothing. And within time that she see that we are consistent, within time, she started really opening up. And then she realized that there's no judgment. There's none. You know, we get up and we hug and we wipe your tears and we crying with you most of the time. So that is very helpful for our women. And yes, men go through it too. Men, I start having a lot of events and men start coming up and saying that, can I speak? I've been through domestic violence too. And I'm like, wow, I thought it was always just the women because the men are the ones who's doing X, Y, and Z. But now I see, I'm like, wow. So then I start having with the ladies, have the men there as well. So with that, I do want to ask, what was it? Uh, I know I had another question in here. What are your thoughts on, like I said, going to the shelter? What are your thoughts on changing up the policies, like for the women who being re-traumatized? And with that, I want one of the ladies that's up there to share her story. Being re-traumatized, as in when you go to intake or you're in a hospital and the DV unit come, you speak to them. Then from there, you got to talk to the police. Then from there, you got to talk to another counselor. Then from there, you got to talk to, if you go into a shelter, you got to speak to the people at the shelter. Then from there, you got to talk to your case manager. Then you got to talk to Nova. Then you got, that's re-traumatizing the person. Over and over again, this person got to constantly keep telling their story. And then sometimes they look at you like you're lying because, yes, the things get twisted up because you're going through so much. You're going through different emotions. You got your children. It is a lot. And I have seen it because I was once a case manager and I didn't even want to ask these questions because I already know what your questions are. What can we do to change that up? Which I have some my own little onto it, but what is your thoughts on that?
So I definitely understand the re-trauma that is going on with the women if you continuously ask questions with different agencies, different officials coming in. I
Right.
know for my experience, I dealt with a particular client. She wasn't an English language speaker. And the reason I bring it up is because when you're doing translation, it's a whole nother layer of just trauma in and of itself. And we actually didn't have at one point the child was translating some of the trauma, and so it was just a whole nother layer, and he was like a witness to it. And from then I noticed, I was like, this is too much. We're doing our interview and then you have another interview here. So I believe that we can streamline as city agencies, as officials. You can definitely have a collaborative testimony or report instead of having to say it 10 different times. And if in fact you need each individual in the room, you can organize an actual date and time in which you give that particular testimony or you give that particular recount of the situation, instead of it being various days and times and having to go over and over again. I believe we have a standard that you can pull in from different states that have actually done a streamlined policy and procedure. So it's not foreign. We just need to implement it. We need to see if it can work. There may be instances where you have to have a 2-day situation. Maybe today you talk to the NYPD, but tomorrow you have to talk to a case manager because of a freak occurrence. But the reality is that you can do it in a streamlined fashion, and it will be better for time management. It would be better for just the in overall operation of the city government in general. So I don't think it should be problematic. It's just about implementation and really using best practices that you've seen in other parts of the world and other parts of this country.
Absolutely. You know, when I used to work at home base, I was able to punch in somebody's social security number and I was able to find out where they live last, you know, all these different little things. And I'm like, oh, so that's something that basically what you said, streamline. Once the person put the social security in, that whole um, that whole report will come up. So I know I have a question up there, but I would like for Shavonna to please share your story before you leave.
Well, even if I leave, I'm switching devices. So I'm sitting here going through some papers. I heard the suggestion of like grouping all the things into 1 or 2 days. So I'm gonna put this date up. If you can see, it's 2008.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the result of back and forth from one abuser that I'm still battling to this day. Like I have to go pick up our daughter from a visit. And his grounds for still using the system, that's a majority of false ACS cases, false allegations to NYPD of abuse or whatever else he can conjure up, where he has the cops come to my house and that's how I come outside so he can gain access to me to verbally harass and assault me. And with our daughter over there, what he'll do is he'll get into her head and confuse her, hence causing a behavior. So now she's distracted and can't function in school, misbehaves at home. She walks around like the world's against her in the streets, and now I had to put her into therapy. And this is what constantly goes on since 2008, 2012 she was born. The courts keep on with the back and forth of here's an order of protection, here's a temp order. He comes in, he doesn't want to talk, they adjourn the date. Right now we have an order of protection that he refuses to accept because he knows if he doesn't accept it, he's not served. So he can continue his abuse and harassment. Things like that, when people think, oh, you get away from your abuser, that the abuse stops, and it doesn't, because they do things like that. So it's like, when do we get our lives back? Or do we have to go to extremes now to get our lives back?
Well, I hope all I can say, the extreme part, I'm a little worried by that statement, but I'm not sure what you mean by the extreme part of that. However, I know the frustration. I think that there are parts in the legal system that we can work to reform. And hearing your story is actually something that should be at the table. They have different task force that have been created in New York City, especially. And, you know, your reality is unfortunately not that novel. People have always abused the legal system to their advantage. So we need to work to fill those gaps. We need to work to change what needs to change so that abusers can't manipulate the system in order to get an advantage over the kids and also you. So in that particular case, I can't speak to it. It's a legal pending case. Obviously, as an attorney, I can't talk on that, but I do know those scenarios exist. And the only thing is that I would tell you is the organizing power. Like organizations like this need to now rally and advocate for change at the city council level. They need to also rally and be a presence in like precinct council meetings to bring it up to people so that it's on the radar. And that when it's on the radar and you have the presence and you have the coalitions together and you're organizing these, not just marches, but you're organizing legislation, people will listen. So you now, you can collaborate with other, Legal Aid Society, NILAG, and all the rest of the domestic violence organizations to really influence change. It may not happen like tomorrow for you, but it will happen. And it has happened. That's how we got the VOWR legislation. That's how we got legislation to change some of the cell phone plans. That's, there's so many things that has happened over the course of our history in a short space of time because of the power of organizing and bringing all of the different domestic violence agencies together, so that those voices, those stories, because honestly, some people may not even know this is an issue. And we give a lot of credit that, people understand and know, but it just could fly over their head. And this is why you telling me this is also great, because if I'm elected, that's something that I now have in the back of my mind, and I'm going to pull on that and say, hey, in the Women's Committee, I can submit this as an idea for a change. And I can also talk to my state partners and say, hey, this needs to change because maybe a particular law needs to change at the state level for it to be impactful. So definitely keep telling your story, and I am employing you and Sharnice to really bring together those agencies so that we can influence a change in city government.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. She is also a member, and she also have her own, Miss Shavana have her own organization as well. So we definitely doing work together along with so many others. We definitely pulling a domestic violence coalition together as well. So every 2 weeks we are meeting up and we are discussing our issues, and also seeing if there's any policies out there already, and if it is, we need to bring that to light, because obviously it's in the back burner. If it's not being passed, we need to help it get passed. So that's something that we're working on as well. So I know I have a question. Ms. Tanya, would you like to ask the question, please? You're on mute, so.
Yes, I just had the question, it was in the chat. Sorry. Yeah, I'm doing it. So I'm gonna read it to her. I just want to say thank you for coming on as well.
You're welcome.
My question for her is, how you gain clients' trust if not being in that lifestyle? And what are your goals to help, even with the laws, to help to pass anything?
All right. So building trust with clients for me is kind of like how you build trust with your friendships and other people in society. It doesn't happen overnight. So I don't go into a client's attorney relationship expecting people to just automatically divulge the entire life story. I think of them similar to myself. I'm not going to tell you every bit of who I am on the first date. You know what I mean? So it's just what it is. I understand you're, asking me for help and I want to provide it, but more or less, I try to be as down to earth and just real as possible. People can sense when you're fake. People can sense when you have evil intentions. People could feel if you have a positive energy versus a negative. So I build it just based on authenticity. And normally that works for me. And trust is something over time you want to deliver. So if you tell someone you're going to call them at such and such time, if you can't make that phone call at that time, then you text them and say, hey, can we reschedule it? Or if you miss that call, say, I acknowledge that I, missed that call, but I'm sorry, I was busy. Can I call you at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it may be? Because a lot of times, me included, you hear all the stories. Everybody gonna do something for you, and they gonna be the best friend. They gonna be this, and then nothing happens. So we all a little jaded. So I know that because I've experienced it. So I said I'm gonna be the change. I'm not gonna be that person. If I'm gonna say I'm gonna do something for you, unless it just can't happen, and I just had high hopes, and it just, I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm like, look, it's a fail. I can't pull through, but I'm going to try. And I think people appreciate truth. And that's how you build trust. You build trust with respect and truth. You don't do it with nothing else. And you come through for people when you say you coming through for them.
That's right. That is a key point right there. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, while you campaigning, is going to get a little rough. You can't meet everybody. You can't do everything. But having that opportunity to say, hey, look, you know, I'm sorry. I was kind of busy. I was kind of tied up. Can we reschedule? Is a wonderful thing, because let me tell you, I'm in Harlem, and sometimes I hit people up, and it will be, and I'm putting the Harlem people on blast. It would be 2, 3, 4 days later, and I'm like, I forgot what the heck I was, you know. I mean, my goodness. So I feel that is very disrespectful. But then you want my vote. So I got an issue with that. So with that being said, let me get off of that before they ban my behind.
It's all right. We all know.
I put people on blast. I'm like, no.
You know, my thing is this: if you can't make it, just have someone on the team shoot a text or be able to respond to the email. Because nowadays we all have, you know, these devices, and we could shoot an email, we could shoot a text, we could tell somebody to do it. We could do it ourselves. So there's various means. We could even message you on Facebook if that's where we at the moment. So I think there's ways to definitely not, you know, drop the ball repeatedly. There's a one time for everything, but if you're doing it repeatedly, then of course no one's going to trust your word. And absolutely, you know, as a woman of God, like the Bible tells me, your word is golden, you know. So I try to live by that, and I try to have that as my high threshold. Of course we fall short, but you know, if you have that in your mind, then you're going to be like, look, you check yourself, and that's how you move in life, and you know, people see that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Was that a question or a clap?
And one more. Sorry, I had 2 questions and one. And what are your goals and to help? And what are your goals about the laws, and what law you think you can try pass a law or something, get going?
When you say laws, and what?
Like a law for women, for us, like people we know in domestic violence, or a self-defense law. And because it's hard to have one in New York City, and you know, because we need one, because people crazy out here. I mean, why should I get in trouble if I'm defending myself? I'm just saying.
Okay.
Well, I'll talk generally about some of my goals, of which you could go on my website as well to kind of see my top priorities. Here in New York City, and also my district, we have issues with our education system. I believe most of the ladies on the call, or that will be viewing this later on, are parents, you know. So I look at the issue that we have here with our kids very importantly, because I always want to protect the next generation coming up. So I want to definitely support reforming and adding positive curriculum to our education system, meaning I want us to have STEM education in our schools. I want the arts. I want our schools to be funded. I want them to be less, to reduce the overcrowding in our areas throughout my district, as well as Manhattan and the Bronx and so forth. So there's a lot that I want to see in that space. In addition, we have a housing crisis. Whether you are renting or you're owning, I consider it just in general a crisis, because the affordability standards are out the kazoo in New York. And now with COVID, we have an exasperated economic crisis on top of that. So I will be focusing heavily on economic development, jobs, education. And then, of course, this is important for women. We know that in relationships, sometimes we stay because we don't have the finances. Sometimes we stay because we don't want to break up the family. So we gotta also deal with the money aspect, because there is such a thing called as economic abuse. Financial abuse. So if we don't deal with the pay issue for a lot of women, you're on the job making $10,000 less than your male counterparts. Of course, you're gonna think about, okay, in New York City, if I leave this man with my pay rate, how am I gonna live with these kids? You know, so these things need to change. So I'm focused on women's rights in regards to pay equity as well.
That's
In
good.
regards to self-defense, I understand what she's saying. That's something I'll look into. I have to really do a little a deeper dive into that section. That's probably something you have to partner with your state officials, because a lot of the penal code is really regulated by the state.
Right.
So a lot of laws we have to, talk to the state partners to make sure that they're feasible and constitutional, so that we can implement. But I have a few on my plate. That's just a general. Definitely look on my website for more.
Right. And on your website, my dear,
Mm-hmm.
you need to get domestic violence up there too.
Okay,
I saw everything else besides that. I was like,
All right, Sharnice, I will put it up there.
All right now. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, as you see the team, we're ready to work with whomever,
Excuse me, reason why I asked
No. Hold on.
Okay, go ahead.
So as a team, we are definitely ready to work with whomever that is willing to work with us, willing to hear us out, willingness to support us, as we support them. So, I mean, if we could get all the city councils together, whoever that get elected, at the end of the day, we are active voters. I'm even showing my 5-year-old grandson when I go to vote, so that way he could probably tell his mother, "Mommy, don't forget to vote." So with that being said, and then it actually happened. It was so cute. And we just want to definitely, especially with this COVID situation, it went up, way up. I was doing a lot of COVID and domestic violence discussion panels as well with that. I even talked about the precinct, how the rate went up higher. I broke all that stuff down when COVID first was announced. So yes, right now, what can we do with that? I think we need to have more more information. I saw upstate, they had it in the library. If you're going through domestic violence, here's a number. And I was like, oh snap, they got that in the library? I was really shocked. So I don't know if all libraries have it out here. I don't know. But when I went upstate, they did. Mm-hmm. And then I think back in the day, they used to have a 1-800 number at the bus station. Yeah. So I think we need to bring that back, because I have a cup that I was giving out to people, WPW, domestic violence, and there's a number. So if you have your cup at your desk and somebody's sitting at your desk who might be going through it and don't tell you, at least there's a number for them to contact. Yeah. But sometimes that number to a safe place don't have beds. Yeah. And then you have to go into a regular shelter. Yeah. And that is really hurtful too, because now, once again, you're being re-traumatized because you're in the shelter with someone who is on drugs and this and this. You're sitting there like, I don't belong here. I mean, what can we do with that? This is why I'm so passionate about opening up a 25 for right now, but who knows where it might go. The 25 right now to get me started, I wouldn't want a 200 bed place because I don't know how it might run, but the 25 bed will be the start of kicker for me. And I'm really going for single women, because shelters, they have a lot of shelters for families, but not too many for single women.
Yeah.
I need your help. I need your help. So I know we have a someone who want to ask a question before Tanya? I get back to you in a minute, but D, you want to ask a question? Okay. Unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry.
No, Tanya, no.
Oh.
D is, go ahead.
Oh.
Daddy watching TV. Daddy watching football.
Go ahead,
Hello?
D. Yes, I hear you.
First, I want to say thank you for this because this is something that we really need. I have experienced what Miss Shanice was saying as far as being single in the shelter and being re-traumatized. And I would like to know, is there a way that we can what's happening now is they're not, when a woman goes into a shelter, they're not focused on the domestic violence, it's the mental illness piece. And I'm trying to fight for myself, and all they keep seeing is mental illness. They don't see what the cause of the mental illness is. And that's why I think that's where I am now, is that they don't care about the domestic violence piece. So how is it that we can make both of them equal as far as okay, if you have the domestic violence and this is kept here, not just only look at the mental illness piece.
So I think that goes to the training of staff members and maybe their understanding of domestic violence. Obviously, when you're abused and you are subjected to a lot of trauma, it will affect the way you think, the way you perceive, and a lot of the issues of the mind. But I think in their defense, they're probably trying to address it in the best way that they know how. And unfortunately, we need to figure out training of the shelter staff, training of different agency staff members, of the NYPD and all the different city agencies that are involved in this particular response. Because I understand what you're saying. You want them to hear your story in regards to what is causing the issue. It's not necessarily just yourself. It's because of all of the lead up to now being in the shelter. So I really would want to look into the training aspect of what's going on there.
Okay.
That
Thank
would be
you.
great.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great. And once again, once they start to bring it out as a public health issue, maybe that will be, the training will be a little differently, because they're not just saying, well, you have mental health issues, but because of my DV issue, it triggered something in me that had me into this, whatever issue a person might have. Yeah. If I didn't come in here like this, like, it's something have to give. I don't know exactly what. This is why we have these type of discussions, to figure it out. And that's what we at. We on the figuring out and bring the awareness really to the forefront, not put it on the side, the back, and then when something happens, we bring it back to the forefront in October. No. Yeah. Domestic violence is every damn day. Excuse my French, but it is. Yes, Shavana is she got a question.
Okay. Yeah, real quick. So with that whole mental health aspect, what I've come to realize, especially being that I have my kids, a lot of the times you have some of these opposing legal reps that will use that, especially when it comes down to custody battles, because they tried that with me and that failed. I wouldn't have any of those disorders, anxiety, depression, PTSD, any of that had I not been abused. But they'll try to say you're unfit and try to throw that rock at you. That's why a lot of the people that go through domestic violence won't even get help, because they feel that's going to be the reason they lose custody. And that's a very big problem.
Yeah, that is a big issue. And I definitely want to look into it a little bit further. That's a little bit outside of the scope of my knowledge base, to be completely honest with you. I do know that things like this happen, but I definitely don't want to speak to how people may use certain diagnoses in the in the cases that are going on in these domestic violence scenarios, because it's a little outside of my scope. I'm sure there is some form of rationale. I don't know them, but
Right.
we definitely, now that you put that in my brain, I'm going to look into it further. And should I be elected, that's something that I now want to think about, and how can we organize the legal community to really shift the way trainings and how we apply a lot of the mental health screenings and whatever diagnoses that they may be finding in domestic violence scenarios. Because if you're saying it, likely a million women have experienced. It's not just a novel scenario. So we definitely need to have this at the task force meetings and discuss it within the legal community, within the advocacy community, and see if there needs to be a change in how we're doing business.
That's good. And we definitely gonna hold your word, because we're gonna bring you back.
Yeah, I mean, because it's true. Like, I don't want to talk on something that I don't have, like, the necessary knowledge intricately about it. But one thing I can say, if it's happening and it's a problem, we can have a panel discussion. We can have the organizations organize, and we could sit at that round table to shift and see how we can change in the near future, because we don't want it to continue and nothing changes, and it just continuously leads to kids being in foster care, or it leads to women losing their children to their abuser, or men losing their children to an abusive scenario. Because again, I'm looking at it holistically.
On both sides, right?
We want to make sure that the kids are protected. We want to make sure that the parents can heal, and we want to make sure that things are getting better, not worse. Like, that's the goal here, to bring forth healing and not continue the cycle of control and abuse and so forth.
Tanya, you still have your question?
Sorry. All I want to say is the statement you said about abused women missing homeless shelters. I just think more women need to think like Sharice, and then like help put them separate. So because those women understand each other, and you put everybody together, it's chaos. And it's like going to a classroom with regular kids and disability kids. It's not going to function properly. That's all. And I just want to say that reason why I said self-defense law now, because we as women now, we are fighting back, because we gaining more respect. And it's not fair to us. We lose custody of the kids. Sorry, like the lady said. And, sometimes certain things is not fair. Life is not fair, people say, but it's really not fair. We as women are vulnerable, and we birth these kids. And, we also birth men into this world too, if you have boys. So it's like hurting on both sides. And they need respect women more of us, even though sometimes we don't respect ourselves, but we have to learn to do that as well.
Absolutely.
I agree. And outside of this, a larger conversation is just how we in the community, and I'm just going to say in the Black community, because it's more or less all of us on the call are African-American Black. I think that we can do more work to teach one another how to even function in relationships, because sometimes we grow up and we go out into the world and we don't necessarily have the proper tenets on how to really function as an adult, how to date, how to really do things healthily. So I think that is something, a larger conversation outside of the abuse, maybe starting from the very beginning, capturing the younger ladies and giving them empowering messages and self-esteem, so that we can limit the chances of them becoming a statistic of gender-based violence. I'm just going to throw this out. According to the New York City government mayor's office that combats domestic violence, they say about 1 in 4 women are victims of intimate partner violence, and 1 in 9 men are. So that's quite a bit, and that's just across the board. That's not saying Black, that's not saying white, that's 1 in 4. So when you think about it like that, that is too high of a rate, in my opinion. So we have to do a better job at providing supportive services at an earlier age on how to prepare yourself for relationships. I think, you know, what your parents can't tell you or didn't tell you, you could get supplemental knowledge in a nonprofit in your community, or through even some affinity groups or the church, if you are into the church or any other religious institution.
Absolutely. So with that, we definitely about to close up. I want to say once again, thank you for taking out the time this evening to talk with us, discuss this this public health issue on domestic violence. I am a survivor myself for, my daughter's 25, let me see, about 22 years, somewhere around there. But yes, thank you. However, I just recently learned what was my purpose. Just recently. And I mean, when I say just recently, I sat back and I kept saying, what am I going to do? What am I here for? What, you know, I went through this, and it just kept hitting me in my face when I worked in the shelter system, all the different ladies that would come and talk to me. And then I started doing my DV courses at, DV courses with sex offenders, and it just kept coming up. I did every paper I wrote in college was on domestic violence, and I just came across some of those papers, and I'm like, oh, you see that? You know, and I just wanted to know, why do people hurt one another? Why do people sexually abuse their children? Why do, you know, why? Just why? It was always why. First, I was going for substance abuse, but then domestic violence just kept coming up. And then I started my organization. We Are Phenomenal Woman was birthed back in 2017. But before 2017, like I said, in college, I've been doing domestic violence. So it was like, now I know what's my purpose. Now I hear too many stories from men, women, children. I even have stuff with our children I do bullying events with them. So I understand where you're coming from when you say the whole circle. You just want to see how everybody is healing or not healing. What can we do? And this is my path. I'm very passionate about it. I don't know. It's just, I don't want to see our women hurting. I don't want to see our children hurting. Once again, I have a 25-year-old. When she had a DV situation, I almost bust down that dude's door because I know how it is. And I was scared to tell anybody.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was scared to tell anybody is because I thought I was the only one going through it.
Yeah.
And then, you know, my only person I did tell was my cousin. Her and I is like a couple of months apart. She couldn't really do nothing. We're months apart. I was 18, she was 18. But as in telling my friends, like, he's smacking me up, he stabbed me, he hit me with a remote, he choked me, he stomped me. My friends are gonna be like, so you ain't do nothing? Like, you know, all those, you didn't do anything, you stupid, why you didn't leave? All that just put me right back into my little shell of, I should never tell nobody. So before I get into that, I'd rather not tell nobody, you know. But once again, I want to thank you so much for listening to all of us, for answering our questions. We would definitely will revise this again, come back, and I hope you went out there in Queens. I can come to your office. You know, I'm hoping and praying for March, the month of March, we can all come with our purple shirts and go to City Hall and have a bigger discussion. Let them know that we are here and we are hurting. So all the ladies that's on this panel or discussion, Zoom with us, thank y'all for tuning in. And if anybody have any last words before we close out, Miss Kerryanne Burke, let me give that.
I don't want you to feel any way when I said what I said. It's the truth, but why I said it, you have a lot of women in jail right now that has to take that into their own hands.
Right.
So don't feel angsty that I said people have to go that far, but it is what it is.
I know what you're saying. I caught the drift, but I was like, girl,
Right.
don't do it.
I'm not
Look,
trying to send you down that river. It's okay.
no. And I'm gonna tell you, don't do it, because
Right.
at the end of the day, you know, I even outside of my candidacy, I deal with the spirit. So while I understand what could lead a person to certain paths, I'm always going to protect you and say that that's not the right way to go. And you're still going to have that on your soul. So, you know, as you said, you went through a lot and you now know your purpose. And I believe in the power of God. There's a reason why you're driving that car right now and you're not in the ground. There's a reason why we're all talking here right now. And I'm hearing these words. And I believe it's the power of God that's in this space, because healing is here. And we go through things in life. It may be domestic violence, it may be homelessness, it may be other things that people don't even speak about. But at the end of the day, we're in this unit of the world together. And if we start to open up in truth and honesty, and we really want to work and help and heal people, that is something that is so powerful. And we could dismantle a lot of the crap that is out there. So I'm very happy to be on this call. I'm very happy to discuss this with you. I'm very excited that I met Shavonna at an event and things just started to unfold that way. And, you know, anything that I can do to help, I will help. I understand that we're living in very strange times with COVID-19. It has caused people who probably ordinarily wouldn't even be abusive to become abusive because they're stressed out and they don't even know how to deal with their anger. And, you know, then for those who were abusive, they just going even wilder in this scenario. So we're going through a very tricky time. And I think we all have to band together to like make it through. And as elected officials or people who are coming into these roles, we have to really focus on helping the people that are often voiceless and not doing the politics as usual. And I'm very happy that you guys opened up this forum and you had the panel of guests that wanted to talk to me, and that you're putting it on Facebook so those who are not on it on this webinar section of it, but they could view online. I'm looking to ensure that women in shelters feel comfortable and that they are getting the services that they need to rebuild their life, and their children are also supported so that they don't have to go through a similar path and story. Oftentimes it's too many times where you see that the kids go through it or they become abusers. And, you know, even with the Rihanna and Chris Brown scenario, hearing his story, I felt like, dang, like it's just like that repetition, that cycle that keeps going on. And, you know, one thing that I learned is that there's always going to be a cycle breaker.
Right.
There's always going to be a cycle breaker. And Sharnice, to me, you're the cycle breaker because you're now shedding light on a scenario and you're bringing it to the forefront. And Shavonna and Dee and Tanya, you're doing that work. And just don't make certain actions of others harden your heart, harden you, but now use it to teach and to lead people to a different path. And that's what I plan to do. And I definitely want to ensure, you know, my open conversation. You got my cell phone number. You could call me, text me. It is what it is.
Right.
So, you know, definitely I would love all of your support. Tell people about me in your borough. And I know, Shavonna, you live over here, so it's even better for me. But definitely, I'm so humbled and honored, and I'm wishing you guys all the best. And I love you all.
Thank you.
God is hovering over us right now.
Right. Amen to
Hovering.
that. Thank you so much. And we love you too. And we are definitely phenomenal women. And, you know, good luck on what you're doing as well. I'm thinking about one day to run. So, you know,
right.
I'm looking at you as an inspiration.
Yes.
Continue doing what you're doing. And we definitely will reach back out to you just to give you a shout out and ask you how you doing and how's everything going with your campaign. I want to thank y'all ladies once again. I think my chicken might be burning, so I need to go.
Go get that food.
Right. See everybody. Thank you. Have a blessed night.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye.
Good evening.